So we will start because it is 12 noon. So I want to welcome everybody to Mastering Time Management webinar. We are High Road Leaders, and today is February 13th. So Sterling.
Well, and again, and welcome everyone. Like I said, Julie said, we're High Road Leaders. What we're all about is growing community, um, growing community. Okay, well, I'll use the word leadership, but developing communities with summits we do twice a year with different summits. We've got the spring one, which is LeaderCast, and then we got the fall one, which is Live to Lead, which has got speakers from all over the world and also local speakers. So we can show that we've got both Canadian, local, and part of an international learning community. We got monthly webinars, which welcome. This is one of them here. And Daria, thank you, welcome. Right. And then, so the monthly webinars, with the monthly webinars, we're going to have ongoing connections with them and other groups that you can join as part of that. And then we've got coaching and membership that's done weekly. Now, there's more information on our website. And without going too long, I'll give it back to Julie and we'll continue on.
So we have a High Road Leader community that you can be part of. It's free to be part of it, and you just get insider information on upcoming events. We will hand out free things, like at the end of today, we have a free time hacks that anybody can sign up for. So if you're part of our community, all of that will be part of that within the community. Some of the things we have upcoming tomorrow, we have a Flash Friday, and it's just a Flash Friday because we are just put it together quickly to hear from Ryan Leake about failure. So sometimes we all have failure moments in our life. Ryan's written a book called Chasing Failure about how chasing failure can turn into your greatest success. So that's tomorrow. It's free at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Then we have our High Road Summit coming up. This is the last of our Live to Lead season, February 29th, livetolead.ca. Sterling can put all of that in the chat, the URLs for those things. And then we can start on time management. So this is where you get to put some stuff in the chat for yourself. So a couple questions before we start is, what specific time management challenges do you currently face? And by the end of this webinar, what is one key takeaway or skill that you hope to learn or improve upon? So if everybody could put something in the chat about what challenges you might face or what you want to learn.
Well, we got Glenn telling us maintaining a good morning routine. Good morning, Glenn. That's part of your routine.
Well, it's afternoon now, but yes, good morning. That's right.
Anything else?
No, I'm still waiting. It looks like Elizabeth is trying to type something there. And Darren, just put whatever you have into the chat. This is a full engagement process. And
So life is about time. It's about time, right? And the interesting thing about time is it's a fixed commodity, and all we can do is manage it, and how it's used is your choice. And I was thinking, I'm a great follower of Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey talks about budgeting, and that when you budget, you tell all your dollars at the beginning of the month where they're going to go. And the same thing with our time. We need to be able to tell it what we're going to use it for instead of it all just getting used up on our behalf without us knowing anything. So every day, each of us have the exact same thing. We have 24 hours, which is 1,440 minutes, 86,400 seconds. And there's never anything more or anything less, and we all have the exact same. So it becomes some of how we manage time will be based on our personality traits. So one of them is optimism, that you're always optimistic in in what you how you want to see the world and how you view your time. The next trait is perfectionism. And you want to have your calendar always be perfect and everything be perfect. So your time gets used up trying to be perfectionistic. The next one is that you're overachieving. And I fall victim to this a lot in that I think I can do way more than what I actually have time to do. And I take on way too many things and I volunteer for way too many things. And the perfectionism comes in there because I want it to look a certain way. So then I take on more. Yeah. Anyway, you kind of get what that is. Over responsibility fits into that too. And that there are times when it's like you're responsible to be a parent and an employee and a spouse and a volunteer in this organization or this and everything, and you're still a child, like, so your parents are still around, and like the squishing of everything that you have to do and the over responsibility just takes on too much. And like, so all of these are like personality traits that can lead to reasons why our time gets used up. The other one is approval addiction. So I keep wanting to do more and more because it makes me feel good to get everybody else patting me on the back. And the last one is misplaced guilt. So it's like I feel guilty if I don't do this, right? And sometimes those can be generational things, like your parents have put this guilt on you that you have to do this every Sunday or you're wrong. So which one of those do you think Glenn already says that's the Irish in me, that misplaced guilt that your parents put lots of things on that? So do any of those kind of resonate with any of you, that one of those is one that you struggle with?
Yep, put it in the chat. And Gary had put there before, being able to finish all tasks at work and having personal time off. It might be interesting to know which ones you fit in at the work bit, because it probably is more than one. Oh, perfectionism. Well, okay, that's that. She talks about professional. Now, Glenn talks about the Irish. You know, we might have to get him to explain the Irish, but
I think that's the misplaced guilt. Like I
the
could just
misplaced
feel that
guilt.
in the Irish culture. You
I
can,
I thought that was the Jewish mother bit with the guilt, but okay, we could we could go from there and talk about that. Now, one thing, Daria, that and this is a saying that I've told to many people, and it's not my saying, is that when we've got more than two priorities, we have no priorities.
yeah. So there are some meaningful markers for time well used, and I love to talk about these because it helps you know when your life gets to that place, or gets to that place where you can enjoy things. So one of those is what we call flow. So flow just means that you're in such a routine and things just happen, and there's never like there's such a flow that there's room for things to happen. You know, like you get into a routine and there's always like an hour or two at the end that you can just add extra things to, and everything gets done and your desk is cleaned and the end of the day it's done. My the other thing is that you have unburdened free time. And this is what I love. And like, I don't know if there are things that you really love to do, but one of the things that we love to do as a family when my kids were younger is we would take a hot tub every evening at nighttime. And like I had two reasons for that. One is I like to wind down with the kids and there's no cell phones or anything allowed. So it's like, you know, we were in there. Other reason was I always made sure my boys got wet at least once a day. So there were two reasons for that. But I loved sitting in the hot tub because it meant that all of us had that unburdened free time that we could just sit and enjoy something. And maybe in your family, it's like you want to watch the sunset or story time with mom or dad or whatever it is. But there's that unburdened free time that at every day there's 30 minutes where we just get to do something together, play a game, you know, play cards, do something together, right? So that's kind of I think that should be the goal for all of us for what we want to see. Is there one of those that would be more one of your goals that you want to see? Do you want to see how that flow where life just goes and it feels good and things are always getting done? Or are you looking for that unburdened free time that I can always have a time where we can do something as a family or as an individual? I mean, maybe you like to sit down and drink a glass of wine and do something like that. So which one would be more one that you want to be doing?
Unburdened free time from Elizabeth. That's and I sent you a private message back because you one of the questions, and part of that comes from is when it comes to free time, we don't even know, a lot of times we don't even understand all the things that are affecting us getting free time. And that becomes a whole coaching process. That's another conversation that could, happen away from here because you'd go sometimes go, oh, when you realize what bind or, not bind, but what area you got yourself in. Sorry, Julie. I just looking at and then Glenn keeping balance, with priorities and stuff and more flow. And Darius says flow. And Ali, you can join in anytime. It's in the chat. Yeah, please be part of the overall learning here.
So I'm sure many of you have seen this before as far as we divide what we need to do in the day. And this works also with your home life and your work life and all of it kind of, I think since COVID, it seems to just all be blended because sometimes like it overlaps way too much, our home and work life. But in the lower corner, we have things that are not urgent and not important. And then we have in the lower right corner, things that are not urgent, but they're important. And things that are urgent and not important. And then things that are urgent and important. And as we move up into that urgent and important, we find that there's more, it's the more significant stuff that needs to get done. And sometimes I think about the not important and not urgent is stuff that tends to clutter our lives. Like for instance, when the mail comes and there's all these letters and papers and crap. And I mean, I don't know, I don't have a great system for storing it, but to me, that's one of those things that are not important and not urgent because if it was important and urgent, they would have emailed it to me, right? Like nothing I get in the mail anymore is urgent or important, unless of course it comes from Revenue Canada or the IRS, then you might have to deal with something. But other than that, is usually not what happens in the mail. But it's like just categorizing things like that in your life so you know where to go and what kind of things. So some of the barriers that we have in our time is procrastination, that we put things off and put things off and put things off, right? How many of you know that you have a big project coming up or your kids need something way down the road or whatever, and we just leave it for a long time? The next one is perfectionism. Some of these also go together with our personality traits. Perfectionism, that we just keep wanting to work on a project no matter until we get it perfect. So it takes up a lot of time. And then there are distractions. I don't know. The dogs bark or someone comes into the office or like there's just all kinds of distractions. People pleasing, you don't want to let anybody down. So you'll say, yeah, I'll do that. I'll do that. Or I can help you with that. And we get into a real people pleasing and extended deadlines. Oh, I have this deadline. Oh, let me just say I'll get it done next Monday or next Friday. Or can we put it off till next Wednesday? And we keep extending the deadlines. Here's a big one, not asking for help when we need it. And maybe sometimes we don't ask for the right help because we don't even know who to ask for the right help. And that becomes a bigger question about needing to find the right people to ask for help. But especially in the office environment at the workplace, we need to ask people for more help when we are feeling crunched. Lack of clarity comes in when it's like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do, right? I want to do this project. I'm not unsure how to do it. I'm not sure the best way to do it. I mean, even this week I was working on a project and I tried it one way and it didn't work. And then when I tried it the other way, it was so easy. It's like, I should have known that from before, but it was a lack of clarity of knowing what to do. And then change fatigue or collision. And especially in the last 5 years, I think there's been a lot of change fatigue because things changed during COVID, and they changed and changed and changed, and then they changed back and changed forward. And there's been lots of change that has happened. And it gets almost exponential change, even because of how much our computers are changing and AI is coming in and all the change. And it's like, it's exhausting, right? So which one might be true for you, or which ones are mostly true for you?
While you're putting that in the chat, the one thing I find is big in a lot of things we do is that lack of clarity. What do we actually, like, what are we actually going to be doing? Because far too often when we look at time barriers when it comes to work, and I've asked many people this, and what is your flow? And they don't know what their outcome is, or they don't know what needs to happen. They're only guessing. And that takes up so much time even trying to, how can you be a perfectionist when you don't know what perfection looks like? Or when you're looking for clarity, there's so many distractions in how you're doing it. So, but put in, like Julie asked, put in the chat which time barriers you have, not asking for help because of perfectionism. Oh, Glenn, extended deadlines, without accountability. That's one thing about it when you think, oh, can I just have another couple of days? Can I just have another couple of days? Eventually, everyone and their dog or every project comes together at once. Then you get that change, fatigue, and collision. Derry, it depends on the situation, but I have been pulled in all situations.
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
that's most of us.
Yeah, I agree with Daria that I've been probably guilty of all of them, right? That those are the things that get in my way. So I just wanted to mention this here is that we have a 4-week accountability group that's coming up, that if you want to be part of an accountability group as far as setting goals and having that weekly check-in for how you're managing your time, you can join the accountability group, and we'll put this up again at the end if you're interested. But it's just a great way to actually have that accountability that says, I need to manage my time better because I want to be available for my family and better at work. So now we need to have 3 discussions when it comes to what we need to do when taking control of our time. So the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, when it comes to time management, what is important to you that you have control over? And what is it that you don't have control over? So when you look at your schedule, I don't know if you're wanting to specifically look at your schedule at work or at home, or even how the two intersect, but what is it that you have control over, and what things don't you have control over? So maybe if you could write something first in the chat about what you do have control over, and then maybe, or what you don't have control over. Like one of the things I don't have control over is when my husband gets home from work every night, right? So then that comes into a time management thing about when should I have supper ready? Those are things that come into the schedule. But other things you may not have control over. I worked in an insurance office for a long time, and we never had control over when people would phone and want to have quotes for their home or their auto insurance. So that's one thing we never had control over, was the phoning and the quoting, and trying to schedule your life in between phone calls that just interrupt all the time, or schedule what you need to have done, became difficult. But I started to be able to group things together. We can talk more about that later. So anyway, what kind of things do you note that you have control over and what you don't have control over?
As you're typing that into the chat, when Julie talked about the upcoming, not encore, but addition to this, one of the things that's gone over is actually taking down, breaking out your time in a day, in a week, and in a month. And it's actually very surprising, just like doing like a big budget where you include everything from haircuts to other things. When you actually look at the time you spend on different things and how it takes out of the time you need, we can actually be quite amazed at some of the decisions we really have to look at. So Elizabeth talks about I have control of how many tasks I take on and which tasks I choose to put my energy into and when. And absolutely, you do have control over that. But that's one of the barriers we run into if we're looking at a people pleaser, if we're looking at, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's hard to say no to some of those tasks, and that becomes difficult. And there is a way around that. Again, we probably wouldn't get deep into it today, but there are ways to work through that. Glenn, in my profession, I hear so many people not taking breaks or lunch or even going to the bathroom. Right there, okay, when we look at it, uh, and yes, this is actually, it is selling a coaching process. But when we look at it, when you're with a coach or with someone else and you talk through it and realize, hold on, I haven't gone to the bathroom that day, or I haven't eaten lunch, or I've got a headache now, but I have only had coffee and no water. And you see how lack of good care on that can lead you to health issues and other things, which now takes time from everything else. And that's something that's really important as you go through it. I never compromise taking, okay. And yeah, Glenn, is good. You never compromise. It's all, this is the things we've got to learn is how to compromise or how not to compromise looking after our health. Because guess what? Time management, gets worse if we don't look after ourselves. There, I have control over when I have to deliver a specific project, point of view, etc. But when you have to collect an input from more departments, for example, you cannot control when they deliver the request info and in which format. And that's really true. Now, again, that comes to another whole coaching process and to work through. There are ways of doing that, but again, it comes down to us laying out clarity of expectations. But it takes time to actually, it takes time to make ourselves brave enough to deliver that clarity. Because we go in saying to this other group, well, I really want you to do it this way, then we kind of duck. But that becomes a culture thing. Again, these are things beyond what we're talking about here.
And two, with Daria, I know that waiting on other departments, and it's like I can't get my stuff done, and then by the time they give it to you, now you're in a rush. So it comes back to a little bit like what Sterling says about setting those expectations up front that I need it by this date because I have this much work on the other end. And maybe you start giving them a date earlier than what you need it so that they actually get it done. I mean, there's all kinds of little trick things, but it's just, I know it's how frustrating it is trying to deal with other departments and you're waiting on them and there's deadlines and you feel the pressure, and you can't make them move any faster. So those are a lot of things that we don't have control over. The health thing is a really important thing because when we are stressed with our time, it seriously affects our health, right? So, and I think that's why we need to figure out how to have that flow and that, you know, whatever it was, the free time, be able to have that flow and free time because it's good for your health. Maybe you do 10 minutes of Tai Chi at the end of the day. Like, well, how great that would be for your health. Just different ways to improve your health. So discussion number 2 now. So with your team or coworkers, when it comes to time management, what can we do to support each other to accomplish the big picture? So this is really an discussion that you need to have with your coworkers or your boss or even your family at home. Has anybody ever had one of these discussions with their family at home going, hey, I'm stressed as a mom or a dad with all the things that I need to do. And these are some of the projects or things that need to be done at home. What can we do to help mitigate all these things? Anybody ever done one of those conversations with and sat down with their family? And how did it go, Glenn? You can unmute if you want to tell us about it.
Yeah, well, I think it's good on two things. You create the openness in the conversation so that you're not carrying that burden, and yeah, you usually reach a solution that works better for everyone.
Yeah. In my family, between me and my husband, we have 3 kids. And early on, I knew I hated laundry. It was one of those things. And I sat down with the kids and my husband, I said, I'm going to teach you guys all how to do your own laundry. And partly why I did that is because my husband went away to university, to college, and he was living in the dorms, and he had never in his life done his own laundry. And he got down there and he's like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, that's it. I'm not going to have my kids be that helpless when they leave the house, that they don't know how to do dishes, they don't know how to cook for themselves, and especially that they don't know how to do their laundry. So laundry to me was an easy one to teach the kids early on, to get it off my plate. These are lights and these are darks. And they're 3 years old. They can tell the difference between colors, and they'd help sort it. And then they'd help put it in the wash and pull it out of the dryer and fold it up and put it away. And by the time my kids were probably 12, they were all doing their own laundry. We each had an assigned day. And on the weekends was my time as well as the household laundry. So I do all the towels and sheets and all that kind of stuff on the weekends, but they did their own laundry and put it away. So early on, not one of my kids ever complained, because they knew that was just part of life. Everybody has to do laundry. Same with dishes. They all took turns doing dishes, and I taught them all how to cook. All my kids can cook for themselves, right? I just didn't want them to leave home being helpless and not understanding about the amount of work that it takes to run a household. I often see way too many people these days are not getting their kids to do stuff, right? And the moms are being stressed. And I'm like, it's gonna be really difficult on your health if you keep doing that. So I don't know. How do you guys feel? Have you had those discussions with your coworkers
And actually, Julie,
or at home?
I want to add to what you said. Julie and Glenn talked about the fact that this home stuff, but there's no difference with work stuff. These same conversations have got to happen, because the principles are all the same when it comes to how you help each other deal with it. It's easy to come up with home examples, but if you sat back, took a breath, and look at work, it may not be laundry. If you're doing laundry at work, okay, you guys are really messy. But there's other things there that are very, very need those conversations to happen. When we look at, and this is one of the programs we're put on, like the 5 dysfunctions of a team. When we look at that whole accountability bit, the accountability and outcomes that come from it. So
I think the whole thing with working on your team is that understanding what people really like to do. Because sometimes if you get together with your team and you say, these are the parts of my job I really love, and these are the parts that I struggle with, because maybe there's somebody else on your team that you could swap part of your job descriptions with, right? Because they really love that part of it and you love something that they're doing, right? So it could be something, even just little tasks that you could just swap around, that different people really love doing. And I mean, it doesn't always work in all situations. I know when I worked in the insurance office, there were some people that loved doing the renewal reviews, right? So they get the renewals, call the clients, redo the thing. And other people, I love doing the new client stuff, right? So we when we sat down and talked about it, I got almost all of the new business. They got almost all of the renewals, and it worked out really well. So, but it was kind of like you needed to kind of sit down and talk about what it is we're doing, because if we all did a little bit of new business and a little bit of renewals and a little bit of this, then none of us were really happy at work, right? But if we could find out what it is that we love doing, then we might all be able to be happy at work. So discussion number 3. Now this one is specifically for your family. How is your time management affecting your family, and what needs to change? And sometimes this comes back to, is your time management at work meaning that you're coming home an hour later, an hour and a half late, or that you're bringing work home and you have to log into the computer to do this or that? And are you spending as much time with your family that you need to, or as much time doing what you want to do at home? Because work should really be limited to work hours. You shouldn't be working more than what they're paying you for. Has anybody felt like you're working way more than what they're paying you for? Sometimes, yeah.
put it in. Please don't be afraid to put it in the chat here, because I can't read your thought bubbles, but there's probably a lot of really good ideas out there. So Ali and Daria too, and Elizabeth and Glenn and Carol, Yeah, just put stuff in the chat. One thing
So,
that, oh, go ahead, Julie.
oh, there, Glenn says, at times the intervention of the phone and laptop, yes, the invention of it has not been good because it's with us all the time. And even working from home can sometimes eliminate the natural end to your workday. And I totally agree with that because my laptop is always there. My phone is always there and I get work emails on my phone. So Darius says, I am always working half hours or more in a day. Oh, what? 1 to 2 more hours in a day. Maybe it is because I enjoy what I'm doing, even though I am aware that that's not normal. And
Well, that's
yeah,
probably more normal than we think if you
yeah.
enjoy what you're doing, because that's your peace zone or your enjoyment zone. Because who doesn't want to have joy when it comes right down to it?
Elizabeth says, there are nights when I have to work late and I am paid to do that. I have had to help my children see that one week we might be a lot of you working, and then I have to balance it with quality time when I am with them, such as taking time off to chaperone a field trip at school. And that's a great thing. I used to do that too, Elizabeth. So some days I'd work a lot more, and then other days I'd take the whole day off and go to the zoo with my kids. Or I only lost one kid.
Oh, you
My
found
da-
them. I know where
yeah,
all your kids are.
my daughter had one friend who was just one of those kids that just never listened, and the teacher specifically gave her to me to keep track of her. It's like, oh, are you kidding me? Like that was almost more work than being at work, but I was with my daughter, so
The one thing here, and the word did come out finally, is balance. And this is something that when I've talked with different people and coaching and stuff, there's no such thing as work-life balance. And that's something we've got to get out of our head. There are times when work has got to happen, and there's time when life has got to happen. And this is something that the minute we think, if I do this 10 hours today, I'm going to get 10 hours back, but that 10 hours might not come back for 2 or 3 years. Just to understand that what season of life or what season of a project you're in. And I think one of the big things with time management, the minute we can turn that around to realize that there is no balance, or your balance is over a lifetime, not over a week, a month, or a year, that'll give us a little better perspective on time management.
yeah. So just want to talk a little bit more about the accountability group if you wanted to be part of it, because it's a time where we can just talk more specifically about everybody's issues and have that accountability to be able to say, I'm going to try this week, which we're going to get into a few hacks now about things that we can do either at work or at home or both that will help us manage our time a little bit better. So the accountability group gives us a place where, hey, we can try out some of these hacks and come back together and see how any of them worked for our lives. So if you want to join that, that's great. So here are some of the time management hacks. So the first one is the 2-minute rule. So in the 2-minute rule, it says if a task will take 2 minutes to complete, do it immediately. This helps prevent small tasks from piling up and becoming overwhelming. So that's the 2-minute rule. The next one is time blocking. And this is what I used to do in the insurance world, is I do a lot more of the time blocking. So I'd allocate specific blocks of time in your calendar for different tasks or activities. And this helps to create structured day and ensures that time is dedicated to high priority tasks. So in the insurance world, in the morning, I would deal with any endorsements or paperwork that came in the morning. And it would often be interrupted by quotes, but the morning was my time to deal with paperwork. In the afternoon, I would deal with emails. So in the morning, I wouldn't deal with any emails, but I deal with emails in the afternoon, and then I'd follow up on any quotes that I needed to complete. So, and then once a week, usually on Friday afternoons, I would do accounting. So like, you know, and it just depends on your job, whether you can do time blocking and how that works. But I do know that allocating specific times for emails saves a lot of people a lot of time. Instead of always going to your phone when it dings or your computer, just wait until there's, you know, 2 hours of every day. Maybe some people do it just before lunch and just at the end of the day. They just have an hour each where they will deal with emails because it can get to be such an interruption that you don't get into that rhythm of doing anything else.
On that one,
So,
Jill, and one other thing with block certain times for emails, you also save time at the other end because if they sent you an email at 9 in the morning and they know you don't reply till 3 or 4 in the afternoon, they're not watching anymore. So you're actually saving the other people time too. And then you can dedicate your time to what you need to do, and they'll know, well, okay, I'm gonna blame it on Elizabeth right now because I can see her in the camera. Elizabeth always responds at this time, so I know at this time I'll get a response back. And just think of how you're working both sides to a better solution.
so the Pomodoro technique is that you work in focused intervals of 25 minutes, followed by a 5-minute break. And after you do that for 1 hour, you take a longer break of 15 to 30 minutes. So what this does is it helps maintain focus and prevent burnout. I use this one a lot, especially if I'm having to write something bigger, like where I will write for 25 minutes. I take a 5-minute break, you know, go to the washroom, get a drink or something, go back. And then I read it for 25 minutes. Like I'll reread it or I'll read it out loud and just take a break because it helps me to write better. I guess that's every 2 hours, then you take a 15 to 30-minute break. It just helps me to write better, to kind of clear my brain for a second and then come back again and then go back at it. So this can work really well in some circumstances. And like depending on your job, not all of these will work really well because it just depends on what your job is and what you have to do. Does anybody see that one of those would work really well for them? Or have you tried one of those in the past?
I do like the 2-minute rule for little things have you done. Oh, Elizabeth, time blocking has worked for me before. Time blocking works very, very well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best ones. So a few more hacks we have is to batch similar tasks. So group similar tasks together. And this is something that we talked about, like checking emails, making phone calls, and completing them all in one go. This reduces the context of switching and increases efficiency. So, I mean, we do this a lot at home, kind of naturally, like when we cook foods and we do similar things together. I think we just need to get it more. And I mean, we talked about that, you know, as far as blocking time and batching similar things together. The next one is use the Eisenhower matrix. So the Eisenhower matrix is that four thing that we showed you about prioritizing tasks by dividing them into the 4 categories of urgent and important, important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and neither urgent or important. So that helps to focus on what truly matters. So the things that aren't urgent and not important, I don't even think you need them on your list. Just throw them out to another day or throw them out all completely if they're not urgent and not important. So just being able to go, okay, what's most important for today or what's most important in this next hour and look at that. And maybe that's how you have to break it down. Not only what's important for today, but what's most important for this hour and then or get onto that. And even when you go into meetings, if you are the team leader, it's important for you to lead the team into these kind of things too, because you don't want to waste their time by doing things that are not urgent and not important. And the last thing is to set SMART goals. And how many of you have heard of SMART goals before? Yeah, so SMART just means that they're specific, measurable, achievable, relatable, and time bound. So what would be, this will be a task for everybody. What would be one SMART goal that you could set for yourself for today based on something that you might have learned or heard differently today? just drop it in the chat.
You know, the one thing as you're putting that in the chat, so please keep typing away. But the one thing about time management, again, if you're not managing time, time manages you, and that becomes really, really difficult. But the big thing about that is that whatever we do, we've got to be intentional. And for us to be intentional in working through it, the issues we come up with is in order to make it a habit, we've got to take that intentionality to the next level by being intentional today, tomorrow, the day after, until you change that habit. And habit changing is not easy. Okay, Glenn says for SMART goals, there's a new push for smarter goals with evaluate and review. And actually, I have heard of that one before, where you look at your goal and you get to a certain point. Yeah, that's something that's interesting in life as you go on, especially if something's going to take a period of time, is that you're using your SMART goal and you're thinking, okay, I'm plugging away, this is really good. But then you get to a point where anything from technology changes, something changes in it, where you've got to look at it and say, okay, I'm evaluating this. Is this still worthy? You know, and then you review it to, if it's still worthy, what do you have to do? What do you have to do to tweak it? Or you're reviewing it to get rid of it. And that's something as we go along. And when we look at roles of, you know, this is from being a parent to running a major organization. You know, we do have to be smarter. You know, we don't want to be best, we want to be better. Because best always has an endpoint. Better takes that endpoint and goes beyond. So just different things to look at, but thank you. Daria puts draft the to-do list one night before and be realistic as well as a block time slot for each task. So my new glasses, I'm trying to read this and say, okay, you know, when you get old, you get these, you know, progressive things. And that's very true, you know, do it the day before if you can. And then, but actually look at your list, like you said, make it realistic. Because if you think it's going to take an hour, you know, almost guarantee it's going to take you an hour and a half because something happens. So that's part of that, bringing that reality. One goal for me would be, this from Elizabeth, one goal for me would be to block out specific time in my calendar. And next would be to making my to-do list based on urgency and importance. I'm going to add to that a little bit, Elizabeth, with that chart. Urgency and importance is always good. Always, always good. But, you know, and Julie put it up there before, make it significant. I worked for Alberta Health Services for a lot of years. This was urgent. This was important. You know, people were rushing. And then you'd get it done. I say, so now what happens with it? Well, it goes into a file that no one will ever read. So look at every project as how is it going to affect the next day, the next week? How is it going to affect your family in the long run? How is it going to affect your work? Make it significant, because we spend a lot of time on important and urgent stuff that comes to a dead stop.
Well, and we all want to leave a legacy, you know, and think about how that fits into our legacy. So we have a few more time management hacks, but I didn't have enough time to print them all here. So if you want the list of hacks, Sterling can put the URL in the, or I can put it in there. There is a website you can go to, just put your name in, and then it'll give you the list of 24 plus hacks that are just like those last ones, that just give you a little bit, try this out. And they don't all work in every situation, because, you know, like when Sterling was working as the advanced care paramedic, you can't, your day is not controlled. Like, you are on call all the time. So it's really hard to time manage your day. So not all the hacks will work with everybody's work life, but some might work with your home, or you might be able to get some little trick out of it that will work for you. So if you want to do that, get the list of time hacks, just go to that URL. And then we just wanted to tell you about some of the other things that we have coming up in case you wanted to join us for any of the other webinars we have. The next one we have in March is on crisis leadership. and just being prepared yourself for being part of if anything happens at work or at home, because both of them are important, to just be able to be prepared for that kind of thing. The next one that we have is on effective communication for leaders. And that one will be really great about why it is that, or how we can become more effective in communicating. So that one is on Friday, April the 11th. And it'd be a great time to just understand how we all communicate different, and if we can learn the pattern, how much easier it is to communicate with other people.
And Julie, I'm just going to jump in there for a sec. This one talks about effective communication for leaders. It's a big title. It's important. But this program also looks at how you deal with your kids, how you deal with your community, how you deal with different people. Once you understand like the different types of communicate, and it's actually way simpler than it seems if you take time to do it. It makes a difference in the long run. Because I know dealing with my son and my wife, they're two different communication styles. Julie knows both of them, so she laughs at that. But that's something that's important because I know with one, I got to just let them talk, and the other one, I just got to be very direct. And me knowing that, I can communicate with them better. So this isn't just work, this is life as a whole.
And it's very good for your spouse and everything to understand. Our May webinar is called Decision Making Under Pressure. And I don't know how many of you are I just feel for this guy with everybody pointing at him and he's trying to make a decision on his computer, right? And it's like, I just feel for the guy trying to make decisions under pressure because we have to do it at home and at work. And sometimes it's just overwhelming, but being able to just kind of look at what's important and figure out how to make decisions under pressure. So that'll be a great webinar coming up. And then we just want to talk about our next summit coming up in June, called Legacy of Impact with LeaderCast. We have a few ways that you can participate. So we are local in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada, and we have one event here on June the 6th. And then out in Nova Scotia, we have one June the 11th or 13th. We have an online one on June the 18th, and we're working on one in Edmonton at some point in there too. So the great thing about these Legacy of Impact summits is we hear from world international speakers like Hal Elrod, who specifically talks about the miracle morning and how to get your morning routine such that it just impacts the rest of your day. So that's what Hal Elrod talks about. Andy Stanley leads a big organization in Atlanta, and his life is about leaving a legacy of impact. And John Gordon speaks specifically about positivity in your life and in the workplace. So those are our world international speakers, and then there'll be other speakers on there like Sterling, Glenn, and myself. So it'll be a great way to just have a day that you could invest in yourself. And just to end this off before we get to, if anybody has any questions or anything at the end, I don't know, does anybody have any questions before we?
Yeah, put them in the chat if you've got a question. Please, I'm ready to answer.
Has anything been helpful for today? What has been the most helpful thing for today? If anybody wants to put something in. Mm. 25-5 rule. That's cool. Glad to have a new rule for you, Glenn. Okay, so the thing about time is it's free, but it's priceless. You can't own it, but you can use it. You can't keep it, but you can spend it. Once you've lost it, you can never get it back.
Now, Daria, are you asking a question for all of us? Because Daria puts in there, what was the biggest blocker for you in achieving the balance and mastering the time management. Because my answer to that would be being intentional. Each and every step, you know, you've got to define reality and then be intentional of what's significant. Elizabeth puts in, most helpful has been thinking about what I can do to start my day off right, remembering to have more structured time. Elizabeth, again, if you can join us for that other group, one of the things we have people do is go through their day, their week, their month. And again, it can be quite frightening. I think, Julie, wasn't it you that when you did it, you know, 100% of the time actually took you 120% of your time?
Yep.
When
When I
you
filled
actually,
out, I have a time audit that we will use the first time that we're in the time management accountability group. But when I filled it out and I estimated how much time each week I was spending on different things, and sometimes it was each day, each week, or each month, right? Like, you know, for instance, haircuts. A haircut takes 2 hours once a month kind of thing, right? So the way the calculator works is that you can put stuff in by things that you do daily, things that you do weekly, and things that you do monthly. And when I put my stuff in, it ended up at 124%. And there's no way that you can spend 124% of your time. So I was greatly underestimating how much time stuff really took, right? And two, like for me, I had a surgery that they messed up last year. And because of that, I've had a lot of medical appointments, and I was greatly underestimating how much time it was really taking. Like I got to the point where I was spending 20 hours a week at medical appointments or more just because of all the stuff. And it's frustrating, but it's one of those things to come back into once you start looking at your time and being accountable to yourself or to your teammates or whatever about what your time is, then it helps you to understand where you might be underestimating how much time stuff is really taking. And I find that home life is really what gets pushed out of the way. And yet that is the most important part of our day, the little ones that we're raising at home.
yeah, it's, you know, either you've got to manage the time that you have and be intentional about it, or it will manage you, and then you become overwhelmed. And once you're overwhelmed, even to get back in time takes a lot of work. And I think again, one of the most important things about it, we can look at the business process or the family process, but what we've got to really look at deep down is the health process. Because what happens is as it starts to affect our health, as it overwhelms us, as it keeps us from sleeping at night, you know, as we wake up too early and we make to-do lists that we can't to do, it just creates that stress, which, you know, the only thing that's going to give you is an early grave. And
Yeah.
that's what we don't want.
And when we do that to-do list, we should look at not only what we are doing, but like that to-do list, but put a time frame that we think it's going to take. Like if I put that I'm going grocery shopping on the list and it's going to take 40 minutes, like try to stick to that 40 minutes. Or because if you don't, you're now stealing it from some other place, right? And I think that's some of too where I lost out on my 125% work week is that I underestimated how much time it takes because I'm in a fairly small community and I was always estimating like, oh, it's 5 minutes to go anywhere in my community. And when I actually timed it out, it's between 15 and 20 minutes, right? So now what I thought was 5 minutes or 10 minutes to go there and back for a trip was actually more like 30 to 40 minutes. So I was losing out on a lot of what I was trying to schedule, just underestimating. So it's really important to, when we estimate our time, to actually keep track. And maybe that's something we can do. Like, would anybody like to get that audit spreadsheet? I can send out that audit spreadsheet if anybody's interested in it. I can send it out in an email, like when I send out this recording, that I'll just send out that attachment that for the audit that you can just work through yourself and figure out, okay, where is it that I'm estimating my time and where is it all going to? I had a friend that the first time they filled it out with her husband said he looked at his schedule and realized that he was spending 57% of his time at work. Right. And like 50% of 7% of his total time, even with what he estimated for sleeping and stuff like that. Like, so then he adds sleeping on that. So his family was getting like 12% of his time. And he's like, we need more, like we need to do more. And he actually changed jobs because he did not want to spend 57% of his life at work. So it's interesting to kind of work on it. So I'll send out that spreadsheet to everybody if you're interested. And then lastly, I just want to mention again about the time management accountability group, and that if you want to be part of that, that would be great. And then very last, I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn handle is Julie Crawford Leads. So you can just connect with me, and I'd love to connect with anybody on LinkedIn. So that's it. So thanks everybody for coming. Anybody else want to say anything in closing? Glenn or Sterling?
Thank you, Julie. That was great.
Just thank everyone for coming and knowing that, and I've used the word quite a few times already, but in order to look after time, one, there's no such thing as work-life balance, and everything you do when it comes to time has to be intentional.
Yeah, assign your minutes ahead of time. Okay, well, thanks everyone for coming, and
Thanks,
we'd love to
guys.
see you at any of our upcoming webinars.